Hey guys! Arturia very kindly sent me the MiniBrute 2S to see how it works with VCV Rack. We will see how to sync them to one another. We will use the MiniBrute's sequencer in VCV. We will control the MiniBrute with VCV and more. Let's start. Okay, so thank you Arturia for sending me this really nice device, lots of possibilities here, and we will start with how to sync the MiniBrute 2S with VCV Rack. We have a few options and we will start with syncing them with Midi. I have the MiniBrute connected with a USB cable to my computer, and in VCV Rack I have here a small patch I made, and we have marbles, sequencing plates, going through a bit of a reverb. It sounds like this. Very nice and chill. And on the MiniBrute I have also a sequence ready which sounds like this. Oh yeah. Very nice. Now you can see the BPM on the MiniBrute is 100 and in VCV Rack it's 135. So let's see how we can sync them. And you will start by making the MiniBrute the master clock, again through Midi. So I have here the Midi to CV module in VCV Rack, and it will convert Midi into virtual control voltage. All I have to do is select the MiniBrute, the Arturia MiniBrute, and this will also work with a Midi cable, not only with USB of course. And here we have a clock output. Now the MiniBrute is set to 24 ppqn. This is the clock resolution, and you can change this in the MIDI center. But it's important that you know the clock resolution of the MiniBrute. So I will send the clock to the BPM input of the clock module I'm using. It's clocked from Impromptu, which works really well with external gear. Now again I have 24 ppqn, so I will change the mode on clocked to 24. If I go with the right button here, I go through CV to P2, 4, 8, 12, 16, and then we have P24. So now it's set to 24 ppqn. And now all I have to do is start the MiniBrute. You can see that the BPM changed on the clock module. It's a bit not so stable, but still you can hear that they are in sync. And I can change of course also the BPM in real time. Let's go with something faster. And it's changing also in VCV Rack. Oh yeah. And now when I hit stop, also clocked, stopped. And there's a nice option here. If you have more sequencers and you want to reset all of them together in the right click menu of clocked, you have the choice to reset when run is turned off. So all the time when you stop the sequencer, when you stop the MiniBrute, it will send a reset message to all of the sequencers you have connected. So if you want to use this, it's really practical. Now there's another clock output here, which will be a division of the clock. So you can also use this to drive different sequencers or to send gate messages to all sorts of modules. And you can change the clock division here in the right click menu. So you have a few clock divisions and also clock resolutions to choose from. Now we can also make VCV the master clock. So let's just deselect the MiniBrute from the Midi to CV module, disconnect the clock, and now here we have another module CV to Midi, so it will convert control voltage or virtual control voltage into Midi. Again I will select the MiniBrute, and this time I'm going to send the clock from the clock module to the clock input of the CV to Midi module. And again, because we are using, or because I have the MiniBrute set to 24 ppqn, I will use a clock multiplied by 24, so it will fit the clock resolution. And now here on the MiniBrute we have a few options for syncing. We have internal, USB, Midi and clock. I'm using USB, so I will change this to USB. If you are using a Midi cable, just change this to Midi. And now I will hit play on the MiniBrute. You can see that it's armed, it's waiting for the clock, and I will hit run on the clock module. And everything is in sync. Again, I can change the BPM in real time. Let's go with something slower. Let's say 100. And you can see here it's on 100. It's still a bit not perfectly stable, although here it's more stable than in VCV, but still it's in sync. Which is really cool. And again I hit run again, or I stop the clock. Now the MiniBrute will not stop, it will just pause. So if you want to stop also the MiniBrute, you have to hit stop and then play again to arm it, and then it will start from the beginning. Now we have another option to sync both of them, not with using Midi, but with using the actual clock. Let's just stop this. The actual clock from the MiniBrute or from VCV. So let's start with making again the MiniBrute the master. So I will change the sync to internal again. And now here we have the patch bay. And we have an output, it's called sync output right here. So I'm going to take a cable. It's a patch cable, TS. I'm going to connect it to the sync output, and this is sending the clock from the sequencer of the MiniBrute to my audio interface. Now, you don't need a DC coupled interface in order to do this. It will work with any audio interface, and you can just use this. And again, I'm sending the clock to one of the inputs of my interface. In VCV, it will come out, in my case, of output 8, and you can see this also if I hit play. You can see this also on the scope. This is how it will look like. So let's send this again to the BPM input of the clock module. Make sure that we have 24 ppqn set up. Again, in my case it's 24 ppqn. You can set it up to whatever you want. And now when I hit play on the MiniBrute, oh yeah, the clock or the clock module also runs. It's much more stable, dare I say perfectly stable. Oh yeah. And then I hit stop, and also the clock module stops and everything is in sync. Now we can also make VCV as master. So let me just disconnect the clock from here, and I will disconnect also the cable, and I will use a different cable that it's coming out of one of the outputs of my interface. Now something important to understand, you will need another extra output on your interface if you want to do this, because otherwise the clock will just be in your mix, and this is not so nice. And also, anyway, make sure that you take the clock signal out of the mix, that you don't send it to the speakers or to the headphones. It's not healthy. I'm sure it's not healthy not for you and not for your headphones or speakers. So this, again, TS cable, patch cable, just going to the clock input of the sequencer, which is here. So this is coming from VCV Rack. So let's send again the clock multiplied by 24. This will go, in my case, it will be to device number 8. This is the input I will use. Again, this is how it will look like also. And now I'm going to send, let's just see this also. This is the clock. Again, a pulse wave. Now I'm going to set the sync of the MiniBrute to clock this time. And again, I'm going to hit play, so it's armed. And I'm sending the actual clock into the clock input of the sequencer of the MiniBrute. And now I hit play on clocked or the clock module. And again I can change the clock. Let's do something like this. And again, if I stop clocked, this will just pause. I have to stop and hit play again, and then hit run once more. Oh yeah. Very cool. Okay, so let's see how we can process the sound of the MiniBrute in VCV. Just a few of the options we have. I have here a sequence setup, which sounds like this. I have a few sequences here chained. We'll have a look at this also later in the video. At the sequencer. Very nice. And here in VCV I have a few modules, and of course we will start with some reverb. So here I have plateau from valley, and I will just take the wet a bit up. Oh yeah. Oh yes. So already with some reverb it comes more to life. Very nice. Now another thing what we can do, we can add some delay also. I have here Chronoblob 2 from Alright Devices, which is a beautiful delay. So let's take again the wet a bit up. Now what we can do, we can sync the delay with the sequence, with the MiniBrute. I have here the Midi to CV module. I will just take the division of the clock to the sync input of Chronoblob. Oh yeah. Oh yes. So now the delay is synced, and we already have a delay and reverb, which is amazing. Oh yes, okay, what else we can do, what I like to do also, is use Rampage to add some edge to the sound. Now I know Rampage is a function generator mostly, but what we can do, we can send the same signal also to the input of Rampage. In my case it comes out of output 1, and from the rising or falling output we will get this gritty edgy sound. So let's send this also to the mixer and start introducing this just a bit. Oh yeah. This is without. And now with. Oh yes. Very nice. So this was Rampage. Another thing we can do, we can record the actual audio into a looper in VCV, and I'm using here Campione from Sonus. So let's just stop the sequence for a bit, and I will do something like this. I will just play a few notes. Let's take just Rampage down for a second. Okay. So I will do something like this, and I will record it into a looper. So let's send the signal to Campione, and from Campione to the mixer, and I will record something like this. Very nice, let's listen to this. Oh yeah, so now it will loop. We can go back and playing our sequence. Oh yes. Hear this greet from Rampage, and the loop is playing in the background. So you see we have some options to process the sound of the MiniBrute in VCV. Okay, so another cool thing what we can do with the MiniBrute, it has an external input that you can use with, I guess, any signal. You just have to make sure that it's hot enough, that it's strong enough. Maybe you will have to amplify it. And in VCV Rack, it's not a problem. So we can send audio from VCV Rack and process it on the MiniBrute, which means that it will go through its filter of the MiniBrute and through the amplifier section, which means also the brute factor, which is quite nice. So here I have a cable just for my audio interface going through to the external input on the MiniBrute. Again, you don't need a DC coupled interface for this, it's just audio. I'm just sending the audio from VCV to the external input of the MiniBrute. So for example, here in VCV I have the even VCO from Befaco. If you want to use the even VCO with the MiniBrute with VCV, you can do this. So I will send the even waveform. In my case, it will go to input number 8. And now it will come out, or we can control the amplitude of it with the external slider here. Oh yeah. So this is the even VCO, and I have it just droning here. I have the amplifier all the way up. Now you can hear that it's a bit low. If I use now, for example, the sawtooth wave of the MiniBrute, you can hear that its level is much higher than the external input. So what we can do in VCV, we have, for example, this amplifier module from Bog Audio. So I will send the signal first to the amplifier, and from the amplifier to the MiniBrute, and now it will be louder. Oh yes, oh yes. So this was the even VCO. If you always wanted maybe to use braids and control it with hardware, so now you also have the chance. So this will be braids. Again, I will raise the external slider here. I have here the LFO2 modulating the cutoff point with a smooth random signal. And of course, to this I can add also the oscillators of the MiniBrute, for example, oscillator 2. Oh yeah. And what I have here also in VCV, I have here actually a few oscillators, and I have here a really interesting module from the Geodesics collection. It's called Pulsars, and it's a sort of a cross fader, so I can send, let's take all the oscillators I have here source, which is a super saw oscillator, will go to Pulsars. Again, the even VCO, maybe we can use more waveforms, we will see in a second. I have the wave oscillator from Blemsoft, which is a wavetable oscillator. So I will send it also to Pulsars, again braids, and let's use a few more waveforms from the even VCO, maybe something like this, let's say. And now Pulsars will scan or crossfade between those oscillators, and this I will send now to the MiniBrute, and it will sound like this. You can hear the movement. And again, I'm controlling, or everything is going through the filter of the MiniBrute, and also the brute factor, which is quite cool. And to this, of course, I can add also the oscillators of the MiniBrute, which are also droning now, but them I can play. Oh yes. And of course I can also start the sequence. Now what will be sequence is only the MiniBrute, of course. But the external output will continue droning. So this is the external output from VCV. And this is with the sequence. Again with brute factor. Oh yeah. Some noise. Oh yes, so again you can send any external signal, but also you can send VCV to the MiniBrute and process it on the MiniBrute. Okay, now we can also use the pads as a keyboard. You can see we have some brighter pads and some darker. This represents the white and black keys on the keyboard, and if you are more of a keyboard player, there is also the other version of the MiniBrute 2 with a keyboard. The sequencer is different, but you will get a keyboard for that. Now in VCV, I have here a voice, I have an oscillator from Volt going through a filter, and the VCA and an ADSR module and the reverb. And I have here the Midi to CV module, which will again convert Midi to virtual control voltage. I will take the volt per octave output, send it to the oscillator, and I will take also the gate output, and this will trigger the ADSR module. And now I can play the voice. Let's open the filter a bit. Now you can hear I can go chromatically up the keys, but I can also, together with the shift button, I can choose to go or to have a major scale, for example. And if I hit the wrong key, it will just quantize it to a major scale. So for example, C sharp is not in the C major scale, so we will get the same note. And we have also minor, and you can see this again. If I make a mistake, it will stay quantized to this pitch, to this scale. And we have minor, we have Dorian, and we have Mixolydian. Now of course we can also use the velocity setting. So we have here a velocity output in VCV, and let's use this, for example, to change the waveform. So the different way I strike the pad, soft or hard, we will change the waveform of the oscillator. And we also have aftertouch that we can assign. Let's assign this, for example, to the filter, to the cutoff point of the filter. Now we can also play this polyphonically in VCV. Since VCV 1.0 we have polyphony available. You should keep in mind that you should use polyphonic modules. So in this case all of the modules I'm using are polyphonic other than the reverb. But here I'm summing the polyphonic channels to one mono channel. So in the right click menu of the Midi to CV module, you can choose how many channels you want to use. Let's choose 4 for this example. And now we can play polyphonically. And again we are quantized to a scale. So here for example I hit F sharp, which is not in the C minor scale. So we have 4 voices we can play. Now other than the keyboard, we cannot assign anything as a MIDI controller to send MIDI CC. This is all analog, there is nothing digital here. So we cannot assign not even those knobs, which is quite surprising, but they can also not be assigned. The only thing that you can assign are the pads and also the transport here, so record, stop and play. Okay, so let's see now how we can sequence the MiniBrute with a sequencer in VCV Rack. Here I have the Turing machine, which is a beautiful sequencer. I have also the MiniBrute going through the chronoblock 2, the delay and reverb plateau. I have here the CV to MIDI module, which will convert virtual CV or virtual control voltage into MIDI. And I have here also a quantizer. Now the Turing machine is going through the quantizer, which is set to a certain scale, and I will send the output of this quantizer to the volt per octave input of the CV to MIDI module, which is set to the MiniBrute. Now this is going to the MiniBrute. Now we need a sort of a gate to trigger it, so I will use the gate output of this quantizer, and already we can hear the sound of the MiniBrute being sequenced by the Turing machine in VCV Rack. And I have here some linear FM going on. And of course it's a Turing machine, so we can lock the sequence. Or lock it to the other side, other direction, and have the double length of the sequence. Now we can also use, for example, the volts expander of the Turing machine to control, for example, the cutoff of the filter. So what I will do, I will send the volts expander to the velocity input of the CV to MIDI module, and then I will just take another cable and I will go out from the velocity MIDI output of the on the patch bay here, and this will go to the cutoff input of the filter. Let's close the filter all the way. And now the volts expander of the Turing machine is controlling the cutoff of the filter. Very nice. So we can use the different tools in VCV to sequence and control the MiniBrute. which is quite cool. Oh yeah. Very nice. Okay, so now let's sequence a voice in VCV with the MiniBrute, with the amazing sequencer of the MiniBrute, really deep and really useful. I have here in VCV Rack, I have the FM operator from Bog Audio, which is a really nice oscillator. I have here also the Midi to CV module, which will again convert the Midi coming out of the MiniBrute to virtual CV. I have it plugged in with a USB cable. We have here a few more other modules also, but we will look at them in a second. I have here a reverb also. So let's start by connecting the volt per octave output of the Midi to CV to the oscillator, to the volt per octave input of the oscillator, and also the gate to the gate of the oscillator. And now we can start building a sequence. So let's start with, let's say, a 7-step sequence. I click and hold last step, and then I click or I hit step number 7, and now I will hit record, and let's enter, let's say, 1, 3, 5, and 6, and let's see how this will sound like. Oh yeah. Let's change the BPM also, let's say 115. Very nice. And now we can start also, by hitting record I can see which steps are active. So we can start changing the pitch with the respective knobs. So let's change here to G, and maybe here to E flat. Oh yeah. Very nice. Now a really cool thing of the sequencer already, what we can do, we have 7-step sequence, but what I can do, I can copy those 7 steps into up to 64 steps. So it will stay with 16 just so we have it here so we can see what's going on. So I can take those 7 steps and copy them another time, another 7 steps, and then another time until 16, and then it will repeat itself. So all I have to do is click shift and hold it, and then hit 16, and now you can see. And here also that we have 2 and a bit more of the 7-step sequence here, and we can change even more notes now. Let's change this also. Oh yeah. Very nice. Now we can also change, we have here another track for the gate. We can change the gate length, for example. So let's take this down a bit. And now here we have 2 more. We have velocity and pressure, which is aftertouch. That they can also be other things, and we will have a look at it in a second. The bad news are that we cannot use something else other than velocity and aftertouch in VCV. So it will not go through Midi. Velocity and aftertouch will go through Midi to VCV. But the other options that we will look at in a second will not be transferred through Midi, at least not to VCV. So let's start with velocity. I will send the velocity output from the Midi module to the feedback amount of the oscillator. Let's disconnect this and listen to what it will do. It will do this. Add some feedback. So let's take the velocity output again to the feedback amount CV input, and I will raise, now this knob is an attenuator, so I will raise the knob something like this. And now here in the velocity we can set velocity for each one of the active steps, and by that also change the feedback amount. So let's take step number 1 all the way down, also 3, let's leave 5 a bit high, and we can create this sort of accents. Oh yes. Oh yes. Now a really cool thing also here that's really easy also for live situations. What we can do, we can easily copy and paste patterns into different sections and change them. So here we have the copy button. I just hold the copy button, I hit the pattern I'm on, I'm now on 2, so I will copy pattern 2 and I will paste it, let's say, to pattern 3. And now when I go to pattern 3 we have the same, but now I can change something. Let's say I can change steps. And now I can copy this. Let's go out of record. I can copy this and paste this to 4, for example. And now when I go to 4 I can change even more, so I can change also notes. Let's go to pitch. Oh yeah. So now we have 3 different patterns, and it's really easy to chain them. Also we have here a chain button, so when I click and hold it I can choose which pattern will play when. So let's say I want one time pattern 2, then one time pattern 3, then another time 2, and then 4. Oh yes. So we have a longer sequence with more patterns. And of course to this we can also add the MiniBrute itself, the sounds of the MiniBrute itself, and I have it here in VCV going through Chronoblob 2 for delay, and this is also going through plateau, through the reverb, so I can add some noise, for example. Oh yeah. Or I can add also the sequence itself. So let's add, for example, oscillator 2, which is a bit bassy. Oh yes. And maybe also square wave. And again, this is going through a delay in VCV. So here we have also the pressure or the aftertouch track. So let's stop this for a second. Now the pressure and the velocity, but let's concentrate on the pressure now, on the aftertouch. It can be all sorts of things. If I click and hold this, I can change with this knob, with this big knob, I can change this to pitch. So I can control pitch with this track, and I can change this to gate, pressure of course. I can send also constant voltage. I can change that for each and every step we have a different envelope with a different attack and release times, which is crazy. I can have also LFOs, sine wave, triangle wave, sawtooth, sample and hold. For each and every step it can be in different tempo, but again, unfortunately this will not be transferred via MIDI to VCV Rack unless it's set to pressure. But what we will do, we can set this to pitch and have a different sequence with different length also. If you set pressure and velocity to something else than pressure and velocity, you can have different length also in different sequences. So we will set this to pitch, and now we have another sequence we can program, and this will sequence the MiniBrute. So the MiniBrute, the pitch sequence will go to VCV, will have one sequence, and the pressure will sequence the MiniBrute itself, which is crazy. So you have 2 individual sequences going. So let's hit the play again. Let's take the oscillators down for a second. And now I can set a different length of sequence. So let's say I want an 8-step sequence. Let's take it out of chain and let's go to sequence 2. Then we can copy this to the other sequences as well. So let's say I want again 8 steps. Very nice. And now let's have 1, 4 and 6. Let's say. Very nice. And now let's change also the pitch for them. I can have this also in the minor scale. And let's go here with G. And now to listen to this, we have to send, I have here some cables, we have to send the pressure output, the MIDI pressure output. This will go to the pitch of VCO1, and this will be normalized also to VCO2. So now we have here a different sequence with 8 steps, with different pitch. And of course, again, I can copy this and I can paste this to 3. And now in 3 I can do something else. And then copy this from 3 and paste this to 4. Very nice. And go to 4. And now here maybe have another step. So we have now 2 different sequences. Oh, I'm kicking the table here, sorry. This is what happens when the rhythm gets to me. Okay, never mind. So you can see we can have a different sequence for the MiniBrute and a different sequence going through Midi to the to VCV Rack. What I also have here in VCV Rack, I have here another voice coming from Basil, which is a really nice oscillator from Volt. In this case, it will be our bass. It's going through SLAP, which is a VCA and envelope generator. I'm going to use the same gate coming out of the Midi module, but it receives no pitch information, so it's just a drony bass with a rhythm to a sound like this. Oh yes. Amazing stuff. What else we can do? We can also create some movement here. Let's go back to the pitch and let's go to let's stay at 4. Okay, let's copy 4 and I will paste this to 5. Let's see if it made this also on the pressure. Okay, very nice. So now I can go here and I have the sequence at 4, right? Let's go back to 4. Okay. So now we're at 4, and now I can, let's say, I can transpose this to, let's say, 7 semitones up. And I can transpose also the pressure, which is the pitch for the MiniBrute. And now I can chain 4 and 5, so let's say I want 1, 2, 3 or 5 and then 1 or 4. Oh yes. We can also have some movement here with the decay time. So let's do this. I have here some more cables. I will take the second LFO, which is set now on random voltage sample and hold, and it's synced to the rate of the sequence. I'm going to take this LFO and send it to an VCA, to an attenuator. Actually, this is just an attenuator, it's not voltage controlled. Now I'm going to take this from the attenuator. I'm going to take this to the decay time of the envelope. Now the attenuator is this, and it's also normalized to the cutoff point. So I don't want, when I open the attenuator, that this will modulate also the cutoff point. So I just go to the cutoff output, the cutoff input, sorry, of the filter, and I'm sending a dummy cable to it. So it's connected to nothing. And now the decay time of the AD envelope is being modulated. Oh yes. beautiful stuff. Another thing what we can do, so first of all we can add also a kick to this, let's say a bass drum. So I'm going to take the divided clock here, the division of the clock from the Midi module. And first of all it's syncing the delay time, so it's being synced with the sequence. But also I can send it to the knock module, which is a really nice bass drum from Volt. Oh yeah. Oh man. Oh yes, I can go like this for a long time. Now another thing what we have here in VCV, a really interesting module, is called Fate from the geodesics. Now this module can add random voltage to any sequence, can do a lot of other things also. I will put a link in the description to a video I made about it. It's a really nice module, but you can use it now to add some randomness to the sequence coming from the MiniBrute. So what I will do, I will take the pitch information that's going to the oscillator, I will take it first through this module, and I will send the information from this module to a quantizer. Because it will add random voltage, I want it to stay in the same scale, so it's going through a quantizer from JW, and from there back to the oscillator. Now we have to tell this module, we have to tell Fate when it should introduce random voltage. So I'm going to send a trigger to the trigger input here on Fate, which will come from the gate output. With this knob I can set the probability, so every time it receives a trigger, what is the probability that it will enter, and it will add a new random voltage. And with this knob I can set the amount or the depth of randomness. So now if I take for example the oscillators from the MiniBrute, we listen now just to the FM operator, we can listen that there is randomness there. So you can hear we have, oh yes, we have some random notes, and to this of course we can add also the MiniBrute. Oh yeah. Nice. So again we have a sequence going through Midi to VCV Rack, and we have another sequence, a different sequence with a different length, with different pitches or pitch information, let's call it, going to the MiniBrute itself. We have some modulation going on, really nice, really interesting, and the most important, really fun. Okay guys, and that was it. Thank you again Arturia for sending me this beautiful machine. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you enjoy what I do, consider becoming a Patreon. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the bell. And have a good one.